I'm sharing my best class setup for every base SMG in Modern Warfare 2. That's 8 loadouts total, and I'm also including optimal tuning if you want to take things one step higher. Each class is time-coded if you're looking for something specific, and if you want to see any of these classes in action, you can check out gameplay in my worst to best review video where I ranked all the following SMGs from, well, worst to best. I'll have that video linked at the end and in the description for you to check out. Oh, and please don't forget to click like and consider subscribing to the channel. So let's get started with the Vaznev 9K, which is a top SMG in this game. The Vaznev is a pretty straightforward SMG. It simply has strong stats that make it naturally good. The only real downside is that it can be a bit hard to handle in terms of recoil. So I have the shark fin grip on here that helps with recoil and also gives us some tuning options for later. I have the Spetsnaz stock, which will again improve recoil at the cost of minor movement penalties and also give you tuning options. I also use the Schlager laser for a simple aim down sight boost and the True Tac grip for major sprint to fire and aim down sight boost. And lastly, round it off with the F-Tac Castle Comp muzzle, which will give me some major recoil improvements. After tuning, which is important, so make sure you stick around, but aim down sight and strafe remain at their fast default speeds. I have a faster sprint to fire time and much better recoil that makes this thing usable at all ranges. As for the remainder of the class, you can use the secondary of your choice. I usually stick to this auto pistol that I got from DMZ. I'll use a flash because they seem more effective than stun grenades in this game, and a drill charge because it's like the best piece of lethal equipment in the game. And as for perks, I'll typically use battle hardened and double time for my tier 1 perk so I can sprint more and resist all the tacticals that get thrown around. Fast hands is the obvious pick for the tier 2 perk because I just want to improve all my handling stats. And then for tier 3, I usually will pick Ghost just to stay off the radar, but Quick Fix also has its use cases for SMGs when you're being aggressive. You can also use High Alert and Bird's Eye, which will give you more information when you're trying to rush around and be agile across the map. So Dead Silence is a must-have to mute your footsteps and move around the map to make some plays with your SMG, but I also like to pair this with a munitions box for ammo because I don't have Scavenger, which I usually will use in most classes as my tier 1 perk, but obviously I have double time instead of that. So now the most important part of this Vaznev class is the tuning. My muzzle I tune to about plus 36 ounces. That's where we will see a notable change in our side-to-side recoil stabilization, which is really important. The grip I'll tune to negative 0.45 ounces to balance that aim down sight penalty from the muzzle. I also tune the sprint to fire to negative 0.16 inches, which is the breakpoint that will give you 1 frame faster sprint to fire time. My last tunings are on the stock. I'll push my weight to negative 1.16 ounces, which is a sweet spot for this attachment. For the bottom slider, it doesn't really have breakpoints that you need to hit, so for this specific attachment, I just nearly max it out. If you are unfamiliar with breakpoints and have no clue about what I was just talking about for these tunings, of course you can copy these numbers, but these are important to understand. Breakpoints are where you'll actually see change for most stats when you are weapon tuning. If you go before the breakpoint, you won't see any difference. If you go beyond the breakpoint, you risk unnecessary drawbacks for no further benefit. There's even instances where you can get a stat buff without any of the penalties. I've done a whole video breaking down breakpoints and showing how you can read the weapon tuning graph. The video over here will be linked at the end of this video so you can check it out and get caught up to speed. So that's the Vaznev class. We're going to move on to the other 7 classes, and these are going to be at a much quicker pace. I'm just going to have a quick screenshot of my tunings. I just wanted to walk through everything on this first weapon here so y'all have an idea of my thought process for the rest of these classes. Next up, we have the Fennec, which is a fast killing machine. It has a fast base aim down sight speed and sprint to fire times, which gives us some flexibility with our attachment choices. Its recoil is the only real downside that we need to reel in a lot to make the Fennec effective. The Bullfighter stock will help out with the recoil at the cost of minor movement penalties. The F-Tac Castle Comp is doing a lot of work at improving our recoil. I also like to pair this with the Lock Grip Underbarrel, which will improve our recoil, but also tighten up the hip fire spread, which will be helpful in close quarters combat, and also when you're transitioning from hip fire to aim down sights. I also like the 1 milliwatt laser for the simple aim down sight boost, and the rubber grip, which is giving us major sprint to fire and aim down sights improvements. With tuning, we're getting a slightly slower aim down sight and slightly slower strafe and sprint speeds than the Fennec's base stats, but we have a faster sprint to fire time, which is the more important stat in my opinion, and we're majorly helping out the recoil. This thing is easy to use up to its effective mid-range. The FSS Hurricane boasts the best bullet velocity in class and has pretty average stats across the board, so you'd think that'd give us a lot of flexibility for attachments, but I found the Hurricane to be very sensitive to attachments, which is why I chose to go the minimal route. So I have the shark fin underbarrel, which will help a little bit with the recoil and gives us some tuning options. We got the Schlager laser for that ADS boost, the Ravage stock, which will help a bit with recoil. The strafe speed penalty can be made up with tuning. The only real downside to using this is a slower sprint speed. And then lastly, the breech muzzle, because why not? You get a one-hit melee with this, and the only downside is hip walking speed, which isn't even that noticeable. After tuning with these attachments, our aim down sight speed and recoil are slightly better, and we have that one-hit melee kill. Other attachment combos can get you bigger stat boosts for things like aim down sight speed and whatnot, but then you'll lack in one other important stat like recoil, which makes it harder to use in the grand scheme of things. So that's why the minimal route is the way to go with the Hurricane, in my opinion. Next up, we have the Val 47, and the setup is actually very similar to the Hurricane, but for a completely different reason. The Val already has a decent time to kill in recoil, and it has fast base handling speeds. I just want to improve all those slightly. You definitely can push one of these stats to its extremes, but then you'll end up with noticeable downsides. That's why we go the minimal route on this as well. So I have that shark fin underbarrel and the Schlager for the same reasons, and then the soldier grip and demo stock will give me major improvements to my handling and movement speeds. Once you get your tuning dialed in, you have faster handling and movement speeds. It's actually the fastest between all my classes I'm sharing in this video, and the recoil is totally usable in close quarters to mid-range. It's not as reliable at long range, but surprisingly that isn't much different than how the Val started out before you started even adding any attachments to it.
Nice.
As we learned in Worst to Best, the PDSW 528's lethality is all in its headshots and upper chest, which is why accuracy is of the utmost importance for this weapon. I like to use the Extend Razor Compensator and the Corvus Barrel. These will significantly slow down movement and handling, but significantly improves recoil, range, and bullet velocity at the same time, as well as your hipfire accuracy. I pair these with the Q900 grip and the TV Tac comb to help reduce some of those handling speed penalties, and then I top it off with the mini red dot because I want to be as precise as possible with this. I don't want to be using iron sights. This setup makes the PDW insanely accurate and easy to handle. Yes, the aim down sight speed is slow, but the PDSW has a naturally slower aim down sight speed in general compared to the other SMGs, so I just embrace that. Our sprint to fire speed remains fast, so you still can be aggressive with the PDSW and hip fire while you transition down to aim down sights. The Minibak. This weapon is statistically horrible, so I'm more concerned with making it easy to use rather than making it competitive. It suffers from the slowest bullet velocity in the SMG class, so I like to use this barrel attachment that will greatly improve my bullet velocity and my range. We got the laser, the stockless stock, and the True Tac grip to improve my handling and movement speeds, and then the grip mag, which is a unique attachment for this, which will slow down your aim down sight speed, but it does so much to help out your recoil. After tuning, we have faster movement in sprint to fire times, and improved bullet velocity and range. Our aim down sight speed actually isn't harmed with this setup. It's actually the same as default, which is a good thing, but also the Minibak has the slowest default aim down sight in class, so you know. The only downside is the recoil is worse, but it is perfectly fine for viable SMG ranges. Bruh. This brings us to the MX9. Straight off the bat, 32 round mag is a must. I would rather deal with the drawbacks that come with this attachment than just 25 rounds in my magazine. The MX9 also has horrible bullet velocity, so the Extend R40 muzzle will help with that while assisting with recoil. The Bruin Q900 grip will balance out that recoil boost, but I combine that with the F-Tac comb and the 7mm laser to try to make up for the slower base sprint to fire time that this weapon has, and all those speed penalties we added on top of that. Usually I try to avoid visible laser attachments, but the MX9 needs all the help it can get, and aim down sight with my SMG for my playstyle is going to be a quick in and out. I'm not going to be sustaining aim down sight where my laser will be visible and give away my position. After tuning, we have a competitive aim down sight speed, minimal recoil, but most importantly, the sprint to fire time goes from the slowest in class to being on par with the base SMG speeds. This brings us to the MP5. It's just a strong weapon, one of the top ones in the game. It has above average stats across the board. The only downside is that it has a slow reload. So I like to use the 50 round mag to give me more ammo to work with and reduce my time spent reloading, because I don't want to be reloading after every kill I get with this thing. The MP5 has one of the best bullet velocities in class, so we can sacrifice some of that with the Falcon barrel, which will help us make up for some of that movement speed we lost with the 50 round mag. The shark fin underbarrel and Lachmann grip are both net positive recoil attachments that will also give me some tuning options, and then the mirror recoil stock will further help with recoil and sprint speed at the cost of handling. Once tuned, we have those 50 rounds to work with. It is much easier to control in terms of recoil, and our handling speeds are competitive. Aim down sights is slower than the MP5's default aim down sights, but remember, its default aim down sight is the fastest in class. So even with these binder penalties, the MP5's aim down sight is still better than most of the other SMGs. So give these class setups a try. I've tried to cater all of them towards each weapon's strengths and weaknesses, as well as tuning them for my playstyle. You know, everyone has their own preferences, so maybe you see something in these I don't. Maybe you think you can improve them, so feel free to share your own class setups down below in the comments. Please don't forget to click that like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.